Hello and welcome to the Sport Integrity Week. This session is from the SIGA Youth Council. My name is Ed Bowers. I'm the creator of Sports Career Development and the host of the Sports Career Podcast. And today's session is all about the SIGA Youth Council experience. So before we get to sharing all our experiences, I want my special guests to share theirs. But before that, Carla, could you just share to the audience who you are, where you're from, and we'll go around the board with all the speakers first. So Carla, please start.
Hey, Ed. Thank you. So I'm Carla. I'm from Brazil. I'm a sports lover and a lawyer working in Brazil with a law firm specializes in sports law called Ambiel Advogados. I firstly met SIGA at the firm as I was handled in the case, and I already love it, and I love it all the initiatives.
Amazing. Brian, I'm going to bring you onto the screen. Could you share who you are and where you're from as well? That'd be amazing.
Sure. Thanks for everyone tuning in. I'm Brian, as Ed mentioned. I'm from South Africa. I'm currently an account manager at a sports sponsorship and marketing agency, as well as the founder of The Staff, which is a community that fights for diversity, equality, and inclusion in sports and other areas. SIGA, I came across it when I participated in the youth forum, I think 2 years ago. And I'm a general lover of sports, football, rugby, cycling, and everything else.
Fantastic. And Adiola, I'm going to bring you to the screen. Please share who you are and where you're from as well, please.
Thank you, Ed. Hi, everyone. I'm Adiola, and I'm from Nigeria originally, but I'm currently based in the United States. So currently, I work for a tech firm called NVIDIA as a data scientist, and helping to implement AI inference and solutions for enterprise and organizations. I'm also on the advisory board for the Commonwealth Youth Sport for Development and Peace Network, where I was the chair for the past 3 years. And aside the CYSDP, I'm also involved in other Sport for Good initiatives, just like my own youth-led organization called Sport for Peace and Youth Development. It's been running for over 9 years now. And in my spare time, I'm also a lover of sports. I play football or soccer, if you call it that way, and then badminton and any other sport. And I follow my favorite team in the English Premier League.
Who's that? I'm putting on the spot now.
Liverpool.
Oh, not Manchester United. Gutted. I love that introduction. Thomas, last but certainly not least, please share where you're from, who you are. That would be absolutely fantastic.
Hi, Ed. So I'm Tomás. I'm from Portugal. I'm currently a jurist in sports law and completing my master's in Université de Lausanne in international business law and sports. And I've been with the SIGA for a little bit more than 2 years. In various roles in the Youth Council, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far. It's been a wonderful experience.
Amazing. So there's the introductions of everybody. This session is really chilled. So if you're watching this, you've got a better understanding of what we do behind the scenes. But before that, I want to just go through a little bit of the application of like all yours experience. So I'm going to start myself. When I got asked after doing a podcast with Emmanuel, he said, Ed, I think you should join this. I went, shall I, shouldn't I? And then I did, like literally the week before I did it. And from my experience, which I love, was they do like this video, 2-minute video, just sharing who you are and why you want to join. For me, that made it more personal to share my thoughts of how I could add value. So with regards to this awesome group, because all around the world, as you can probably tell already, but also like how we can look at sport integrity from different cultures and different points of view. So that's why I joined. Carl, I'm going to bring you on board. I know you gave a little glimpse at your law firm, is associated with SIGA, but what inspired you to actually apply?
Sure. I think since I was a little kid, I loved practicing and following sports. And when I was older, I started practicing triathlon. and for a long time becoming a good competitor. It was my main goal. And then I started working with sports law. So I met Siga, as I told you. And for me, mix the two things that I love the most, sports and my job. It were amazing. And then knowing that there's a lot of, especially Siga, doing this kind of job with integrity and governance in sports. It was my main, it was, I think, the thing that I love the most to join the Youth Council.
Can you remember when you applied? I'm going a bit deeper because if people are listening going, shouldn't I apply? What really, made you do that application button, like click it to go, I'm applying? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Maybe to know a lot of people that love sports like I do, and to think about sports more than the competition and as a social mechanism, as sports like something that it's more than just performance.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Awesome. Brian, I'm going to bring you in with regards to particularly sponsorship and also your community. What inspired you to apply for the SIGA Youth Council?
I think generally from my perspective, I think growing up in South Africa, and I think something I really took from joining was the sort of eclectic views you get from people across the world. But I was obviously born in South Africa, and there obviously are a lot of marginalized communities, one of which I grew up in. So you kind of see the barriers affecting people to make positive change in sport. So I think from a young age, that's what really sort of, fueled the fire. So I think joining SIGA was driven by my profound belief in the power of sports to drive positive change. I know there's been a lot of stories of the past of the 1995 World Cup with Nelson Mandela famous saying, but I just recognize the need for greater integrity within sports and the opportunity to ensure sort of marginalized communities are included and represented. And that's one of the things I really highlighted in sort of the application and just generally the council's dedication to promoting values that align with my personal values like fairness, inclusion. And I think that really resonated deeply with my personal and professional values within what I do now in sponsorship and marketing. You really want to put out work that really speaks to communities and drives positive change. So I think in jest, I just wanted to contribute actively to creating a more equitable and transparent sports landscape. And that's really, what I wanted to leave in sort of my legacy in the Youth Council is having those tangible impacts that, we have on the community and greater sort of sports landscape.
100%. I'm going to bring Adiola. Considering you got such a passion for sport development piece, I would still love to hear your thoughts of what inspired you to apply for this program. I'd just love to hear your thoughts, your end.
Yeah, sure. I think one important factor for me was the learning opportunity. So over time, I've been working in areas of sport for peace and youth development, majorly, educating young people about sport values, teamwork, resilience, and all of that. But I've never really actively done anything in sport integrity or sport governance. So I see it as an opportunity for me to learn about these issues and how I can contribute to them, working with other young leaders like yourself. And to be honest, like my awareness coming into the Youth Council, in our research and talking to other young people who are working in this space has really like expanded my knowledge about sport integrity and why it's really important. So I think that was the key factor for me. And somebody on the SIGA Youth Council, or was it the mentorship program before? She was part of the CYSDP executives. So she recommended like, oh, I said, I found this online. I saw your interview and I wanted to ask your experience. And she was like, okay, yeah, go for it. And I think another thing was I relocated from Nigeria and I wanted to immerse myself in the sport industry in the United States. So I see it as an opportunity to also like expand my network, find other people who are passionate about using sport to drive social impact, to drive social change, to educate people about what is really important and how sport can solve some of those social issues. So those were the key factors for me to apply.
Just on the application side, again, if somebody's watching going, should I, shouldn't I apply? What made you hit that application button? Except like all the things you said for the mentoring and networking. I mean, individually, when you had to write out your application and do your video as well.
It's just that passion to contribute impact, the willingness, the excitement about, oh, I can utilize my interest in sports to create impact in my community, and I could educate people about sport integrity issues, spread our awareness, educate stakeholders, especially about being held accountable, especially for young people in sport, athletes who don't know what their rights are about sport integrity and governance. So it's just that passion, the willingness. I see like a vision to create impact, sustainable impact. That's what made me click the application button.
Amazing. Thomas, I want to bring you onto the camera now. Just share to the listeners. I know you've been a couple of years, but even from the last 2 years, what inspired you to apply looking back the last 2 years?
Well, having always been involved in sports, I always wanted to be a part of it. But I think we should not always only be interested in the facade or the good things. We need to get deep into the issues. And I came to understand that football or sport in general is not just, you know, colorful stuff. It's some shady things and some real deep problems. And I always interested in myself in those topics. I wanted to know more, and I wanted to join an organization that wanted to promote the sustainability and the future for sport. And one thing I learned for sure is that without integrity, there is no future for sport. And when you join an organization with a name in the name itself of sport integrity, I think you're always aiming to a better future. And yeah, I always interested myself in applying to get things done instead of just laying back and letting things happen.
100%. So now you've got all that side of the application. I hope you all know with regards to this is part of Sport Integrity Week. This is one event you should be watching anyway. This is part of the sessions, but there's many others which relate to all the things that have been discussed already from the application, but also why sport integrity is important. It sort of leads to today's main sort of topic from behind the scenes of being part of the SIGA Youth Council. For me, like, what have you learned? I'm speaking to the speakers with regards to the 18 months of being more mindful of sport integrity in the work you do outside SIGA. So for me, I'm a podcaster. I'm part of different projects like women's football. When I'm in meetings now, I kid you not, from all the calls we've had the last 18 months, it's made me more mindful of like sport integrity, fairness, not just on the sports field as we mentioned, but actually in meetings, and everybody's having their own voice. Even I've adjusted myself in how I add value to the table or make sure I listen to everybody to then find the best idea. That's just something I've learned reflecting. Carl, I'm going to bring you on, like, how are you more mindful as a lawyer with regards to sport integrity through the experience of the last 18 months?
Like I said, I think that joining the Youth Council made me realize that sports, it's a powerful mechanism of integrity and socialization. And like Thomas said, there's a lot of deep problems that we can help to maybe fix and maybe contribute. And also meeting all my colleagues from the Youth Council, I learned that this kind of passion, sports integrity, sports can unite people from all over the world. It's amazing to join meetings and see like people from all over the world with a lot of different culture and with one passion in common, that it's sports, and it's sports like integrity and to make something better in sports.
That's how we met, in person last year at the Sport Integrity Week. So
Yeah.
Nothing beats that face-to-face interaction. Brian, I'm going to bring you on, particularly with regards to your working in marketing and sponsorship. Again, how has sport integrity made you just more mindful of the topic in the day-to-day work you do?
Yeah, I think as Thomas and Adiola mentioned, I think from my perspective, I've also never worked in sort of the space of sports integrity. So kind of joining this has been a huge advantage for me, and engaging with diverse perspectives with the fellow council members, industry experts, like stakeholders. It's really given me a broadened view on sort of corruption, doping, discrimination, and all the sort of issues we face in sports. So I think from like a professional perspective, I've kind of realized, and as you just said there, it's like sitting in meetings, you realize the power sport can actually have and how we can influence sort of policies and spark important conversations. I think it's sort of a takeaway within the work or the research project that we did, that there are definitely, a lot more that companies, brands, sponsors can do in terms of ensuring safeguarding, for example, in football, integrity, fairness, inclusion. So I think from sort of a personal and professional perspective, I think SIGA has really sort of broadened my awareness in that. And that's kind of been my biggest takeaway. And I think it's something that really puts me in good stead for the future. Of course, this is a youth council, so I think all of us are still relatively young. So I think it's something that really has given me a platform and broadened my eyes into the work that I'm planning on doing personally within the staff, and continuing the fight for equality, inclusion, and diversity in sports, but also on a professional landscape of trying to influence sponsors, agencies, massive companies into having using their tools to implement meaningful change. So I think, that has been a massive eye opener, and it's a big takeaway for me.
Awesome to hear. And just to add, because I'm sort of working on some sponsorship bits, it all comes down to values. And when you have that integrity in place with two companies trying to work together, it comes down to integrity. Have you experienced that? I'm just curious on that side of things, when you reach out to a company from a sponsorship/marketing activation.
Yeah, I think it's always a tricky conversation. I think in the general context of sports companies, they kind of focused on results, performance. But as you mentioned, I think all the youth council attest to this. I think it's a real good thing to use your voice, and I think that's a good thing that SIGA does for everyone, is allows us to have a voice today, for example. So I think one of the things I've taken is to use my voice to spark change in that sort of status quo within companies. So I think, as you mentioned, it's pretty much a triple bottom line for sponsorship and marketing companies. But I think it's really something that I encounter a lot, but it's something now that I've joined SIGA, it's something that I actively aim to address.
Awesome. Adiola, I want to bring you on because you said a big word on this conversation with regards to accountability. And I want you to remember that point, because with regards to you working in sport tech, again, how has that made you more mindful in meetings, in the work you do, from an integrity mindset when working in the sports industry, particularly the tech sector?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest takeaway is sport integrity is a bigger issue than we think it is. And one thing SIGA you Council open my eyes is there is no amount of education or awareness spreading that is too much or that is too little. So, we've done our part in our own way to sensitize people about these issues. And we know, like, in our professional and personal spaces, we continue to do that through different platforms that we have access to. In terms of tech, to hold stakeholders accountable, innovation and technology is important, especially the data speak for itself. So when you follow the data, you follow what the data says. Case in point, survey and research, we see the responses from people from organizations who completed the surveys. So you follow the data, you know what their mindset is about sport integrity issues, you know how they are working hard um towards solving these issues or maybe excavating it. I'll bet ignorantly. So the data speaks for itself, and technology can help cut down on these issues and also make people accountable. If you're using tech to solve some of these issues like sport integrity, so look at integrity in sport, like sport betting or like violence in sport or on inequality in pay in sport. So when you incorporate technological tools or advancement, you're able to track who is being paid equally or not. You know, you are seeing teams that are competing. Is there betting in the sport or like are one team pitched against the other? So the technology will be able to expose a lot of this corruption and people will be more accountable because they will be exposed. So that's what I would say in that aspect. So integrity in sport is a big issue. And like Brian said, like Carla said, using our voices as young people who, in our own platforms, we always efforts to reach out to stakeholders, keep them on top of their toes. Like there are people who are watching us, there are people who demand better from us. So and that's one of my biggest thing. Like collectively, our voices are very powerful. Individually on our platforms, we can also use that to spread that awareness as well.
100%. Thomas, I'm going to bring you on. I'd like to keep the theme of accountability because you've mentioned right at the start, there's that shadiness with regards to sport behind the scenes that isn't integrity at all. So from our perspective, and including myself, as youth council members, or as Brian said, we're still quite young from a sports industry standpoint, why is accountability key with regards to how we show up in the industry?
Well, I think it starts from a young age. If you are accountable for your actions, you are always going to lead by example. And I've seen by coming onto this global scene that SIGA provides, I got a sense of all those troubles, all those obstacles that sport integrity faces, and the need for safeguarding the greed, transparency. I think all of those are ever growing. There's an ever growing need for more of it. And we, the youth, we need to, from a different perspective, showcase these problems because somehow we get a different sense. We are not embedded on these webs that sometimes older and more experienced people are. We get a different, fresh perspective, and we can shed a light on real problems. And once we get that experience, we can lead by example, always being accountable. Yeah.
100%. So I hope if you're watching that segment part, you can hear all their self-awareness on sport integrity, but also why leadership is key as well. But I always want to finish with a fun question. We are still young. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, everybody, of like what have you enjoyed the most from this experience the last 18 months. So I'll start with myself. For me, without a doubt, it was meeting Carla and Thomas last year at the summit in Portugal. It's not just building the network, it's building the meaningful relationships over time. I'm going to be really fun on my answer. Like I've just recently done a triathlon for charity. I had Carla on like DMs messaging me like tips of how to be better cycling. I know this may not be relevant, but it is relevant because this is what being part of like this sort of youth council is about. It's the relationships you build over time. And so that's number one. The second one is I've enjoyed learning from different people, from different cultures. Like for me, as much as I wish we were all in Portugal last year, but I've always learned from Lakai, for example, who's from South Africa. We've had great conversations. So for me, that they've been like my two takeaways with the people I've met. Carl, I'm going to bring you on. I saw your smile when I mentioned you with my triathlon journey, but what's been the most, what have you enjoyed the most from this experience the last 18 months?
I'm with you, Ed. It was really nice to meet you all there in Portugal last year. And I think it's more than the network. We can meet different cultures, and we can see that even I'm in Brazil, you are in England, and Thomas in Portugal, and we are connected with the same initiative, and we went to getting the same point. And I'm a lawyer, you are not, but we are here together talking about the same thing. So it was nice. And I think that also seeing that how many people around the world are concerned and interested about sports as a social mechanism, not just about who is going to win the competition. And it make me want to understand more this world and do my best to contribute.
Love it. Brian, I'm going to bring you on. What have you enjoyed from your experience the last 18 months?
Generally to what you mentioned, I think it centers around sort of the relationships I've built over the 18 months. I think that has been sort of the best part, is getting to know different people from diverse cultures, countries. And I think the main thing is, you know, we're all like-minded people in the sense of that we aligned to Seeker's vision, but we couldn't have been more different people. Like, we're all from different communities, different backgrounds, different social statuses. Like, it's absolutely crazy. But I think, you know, in the future, I'd obviously love to get out there and meet you all in person. But I think for now, I think I've really built some relationships with members of the council that I think will last a lifetime. And I think that's really something special and something I've enjoyed over the last 18 months.
Amazing, and really well said. Adiola, I'm going to bring you on. What have you enjoyed the most reflecting the last 18 months?
I think the last 18 months for me was you know, like the ideas exchanged from each and every one of us. You know, like issues in sport is global, right? And you know, sharing our ideas, sharing what we've learned, sharing what we've seen and experienced, I realized that we encounter same issues, even though we're in different locations, like in different places. Being able to like exchange ideas, talk about them, and also act towards them. You know, I really enjoyed that. And another thing I enjoyed is, you know, the opportunity the youth counselor provided. I found a mentor in this program, like speaking with experts and stakeholders, you know, just interfacing with them, those who have worked in this issue on these issues for a long time. You know, and bringing up the next generation of sport integrity leaders. So that was really key. And also, I think personally for me, one of the most important thing, or like, I won't say the most important, but personally, what I'm overjoyed about is being able to like, you know, what I've learned, what I've gained from this experience to start another initiative on sport integrity education. So you guys watch out for that. So it's feel like, yeah, I'm growing like in that field. I came in not knowing much about sport integrity issues, but now I'm going to leave the youth council, or like after the 18 months, I'm going to like start educating people, making them more aware about the issues in integrity and sport governance.
What a wonderful answer. I think I see everybody nodding their heads. That's what it's all about, passing on the bat with it from an educational standpoint, from sport integrity. Love that. Thomas, I'd love to hear your thoughts of your experience the last 18 months. I know you've been in the last 2 years, but specifically the last 18 months. What have you enjoyed the most?
Well, I enjoyed certainly meeting you all in person in Lisbon last year, and for sure participating, intervening in person in a global stage is something that I'll always remember. But yeah, undoubtedly, as you all said, the connections, the challenges, and the interest in dealing with different time zones and finding common sense, common ground in topics, although we come from different backgrounds, it's something that it needs to be cherished, and it shows that even though when we're not playing sport, if we talk about sport, we can always come together, and sport is truly that, the coming together for one common goal. And that's amazing. It's amazing.
100%. So we're getting near the end of the session now, and I've given all my speakers one important task. This is a really important thing. So I hope you've got a better understanding about what we have done the last 18 months behind the scenes, the application side. But my guest speakers are going to kindly share like one tip to give you. Yes, I mean you, if you're watching, if you're on the fence, if you're not sure, there'll be more details of where you can apply on the CEU website. But I would love all of you, my speakers, to share sort of one tip from a guidance standpoint if somebody's listening and they're on the fence of applying. So, Carl, I'm going to ask you, like, what would be your tip to somebody watching now who is on the fence of applying? What would it be?
It's not a tip, but I think SIGA Youth Council is the right environment for everyone who is willing to contribute with the sports industry, and as well as to develop and know incredible like-minded individuals. So if you are considering investing your time at it, go ahead.
Love it. Brian, I'm going to bring you on. What's your number one guidance tip?
I think my number one tip would be, I think everyone considering applying should, I think, do a triathlon, because I think like Ed and Carla, I myself did the first one this year as well. So I think there's something in the blood there. But sort of in all seriousness, I think the one tip I'd give is for someone to be prepared to engage actively in discussions. I think with us being from all corners of the world, I think sharing your unique perspectives and actively participating in projects that we do, I think is very important. And I think the main thing is remember that your voice matters and your dedication can contribute to shaping the future of sports and sports integrity. So I think you have a real opportunity to create that change, and I think you shouldn't miss it when you have the opportunity.
Love that. Adiola, I'm going to bring you on. What's your guidance tip?
I think one thing like I would advise is let your passion show through your application. Like don't be afraid to put yourself out there. About like I love working in this space. I love solving impact issues in this space. Let your passion shine through. And just to echo what Carla and Brian has mentioned, be prepared to enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. Sometimes advocacy or working in the space, it can take a long time before you see the fruit. So don't get discouraged. Just keep letting your passion shine through, and engage stakeholders, and just know that at the end of the day you can tell yourself, yeah, I actually put in my best. I did something, and this is what I'm getting out of the experience. So
amazing. Thomas, I'm going to bring you on. What would be your number one tip to the viewer?
I think people who are thinking of applying should know that it's not about pressuring you, it's about empowering you. And you should not be afraid. You should be bold. You should be committed to your ideas, your beliefs, because it's a journey. You never know everything. It's a learning process. Don't be afraid to ask questions. To be persistent sometimes. I think perfection is not the goal. It's progress. It's the goal. So don't bother if you have a lot of experience or very little. It's not about that. It's about your ideas, your views of the future of sport, and your desire for integrity in sport.
Tom, how do I beat that? That's brilliant. I'll finish off my end, like from the guidance tip. I'll just say be open-minded. Like even when I applied, I knew I wanted to be a better leader. I knew I wanted to learn more about sport integrity. So I gone with such an open mind. And for me, it's not about, if I'll be really honest, the CV. It's about who you are as an individual with your character and personality. So if you focus on that when applying, that should be your key focus. Because then you'll meet like-minded people on this session who we all have that same value. And that's the key thing. It's all about connectivity and building a community of like shedding the light on sport integrity, going the right direction in all walks of sport on and off the field. So thank you so much, Carla, Brian, Adiola, and Thomas. That's the end of this session. It's been a pleasure my end moderating. And thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of Sport Integrity Week. Take care. Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching for Sport Integrity Week. This is a little interview with my good friend Lakar, who's part of the Youth SIGA Council. And before we get rock and rolling, this session is all about the experience of being part of the Youth Council, which we both are. So before we get going, Lakar, could you share who you are, where you're from, and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Ed. Greetings to everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity, firstly. So basically, Likaya, away from what I do, is a very difficult question, because what I do for me personally, you'll always find me around a sporting field, or in front of a sport channel, watching TV. But basically, you know, I'm a young man from South Africa who, in terms of, you know, developing themselves within the sports industry. I take a lot of passion. I take a lot of pride in what I do, and through that, you know, I've had quite a few opportunities come to fruition because of that. But outside of sports, I'd really say I'm a firstborn child of a single mother, and you'll probably pick it up in a lot of the habits that I have. A lot of people say I've got deputy parent tendencies, but that's just who I am. Yeah, I think that's pretty much in a nutshell. Anything more you want me to share?
No, that's perfect, my man. And I love the energy already in your first answer. Just for people watching in of like, why did you join the Youth Council? And reason my end, which I shared in the moderating session with the other SIGA Youth Councils, is the one thing I've enjoyed the most is the connectivity and work with people. I meet virtually most of the time, but get insight of different cultures. And that's one thing I've even enjoyed from our calls on WhatsApp and even different projects, is we're learning from each other. And I've certainly enjoyed that working with you. So could you just share to listeners or viewers, like, what inspired you to join the Youth Council first?
Yeah, I think if I go back to the very first conversation I had with Ian, because I think I just missed out on the intake from the previous class. And one of my main reasons back then was always to grow in terms of my network, getting to interact with my peers who are very much like-minded to myself, you know, people that share the same passion for the sports industry, but living in different regions of the world. I think that in itself has been absolutely priceless. But if you ask me now, with regards to why, I think the biggest thing would still be the networking aspect, but also just getting to learn from people, you know. I always say to people, there's a saying in Xhosa that says, Xhosa being one of the South African languages, which means, you know, which if you translate it, you translate that meaning, it means, you know, there's a lesson to be learned from every experience. And that's really what it's been, you know, just to be part of the experience, be part of, you know, the experience of being part of SIGA, experience everything, and just take all the lessons that I can learn. And man, oh man, what an experience it's been. I mean, just interacting. I know one of the big things Taylor would have probably mentioned is the time constraints, you know, balancing everybody's time zones. I mean, that's something you would take for granted when you work with people in the same region. But I mean, being part of an international organization where you want to get everybody involved, you know, that's one of the key things. I mean, even with our conversation, just making sure that we're talking about the same time, that's been quite an experience. But all in all, you know, just being amongst young people who share the same passions for sports, the sports industry, and essentially want to see part of the sport, also of the sports industry, my apologies, also come to the front, has also been quite impactful. And I'm really looking forward to the research that will come more towards the end of our time. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just from an application standpoint, anybody's watching this and going, want to learn more, like for me, what I shared already is that I enjoyed the video we had to do through the application because it showcased who we are, our passions, and the areas we want to improve from an integrity standpoint. Could you just share a bit of your insight? Because when we say this word application, people maybe fear of just even applying. And I think for me, I want to break that barrier that this is open to all. If you've got the right attitude and mindset, for me, that's the two key components. But if you wouldn't mind sharing your insight of the application, that would be amazing just for any viewers who are on the fence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I think the application process, and if we're being honest, is really a matter of sharing who you are. And that's the beauty of the Youth Council. We come from many different backgrounds, and that's the beauty of it. We want different voices to come together and just share ideas because there's beauty and diversity. So please never shy away from that opportunity of sharing who you are and sharing your story. I think we need more young people, especially from an African perspective. I was on a call a couple of weeks back with some other young people from Africa and around Africa, sharing a similar thing about our stories. And one of the big things that we picked up was when we look at our national sporting federations and our Olympic committees within the African landscape, there's limited young people that you'll see across in those national executive committees or in the structures that be. But, the Youth Council is one of those platforms that is actually giving the young people an opportunity. So please, by all means, I'd love to encourage young people to share their stories. From a personal perspective, I enjoy it. I really do enjoy sharing a bit more about myself and also learning from people. That's pretty much me in a nutshell. Yeah.
Amazing. Just from a sport integrity standpoint, I'm really curious relating to the 18 months. How have you looked at sport integrity from an application standpoint? Because with all our meetings, we've always been talking about it, but I'm curious of how you've applied it in different projects and different works, or even how you show up in a meeting. And the example I gave is whenever I work now, I just have this integrity piece through the education, through SIGA now. And I just would love to hear your insights that it's learning through the experience, but then applying it in the work we do outside of SIGA, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Just by being part of the Youth Council, integrity is more front of my mind now. It's like an active thing that's always there, where in all of my interactions now, it's literally about that. If I hold the integrity component really high, and if I do feel that it is compromised, I tend to step away from certain interactions where that would be compromised. But to be honest, I think the application part of it has been that, being part of the Youth Council, SEGA Youth Council, has really brought the integrity component more towards the front of things that I do. It's become now an active thing where even if I am going to interact with a certain project, it's something that I look into when I do my due diligence on the project, having a look at the integral part of it, is there policies in place? Is there safeguarding policies? What's the overall perspective on this? What's the aim? And just not just jumping into things, because I do feel that for an industry with limited opportunities, we, as young people, we love to just take on anything that will come about. But I think being part of the Youth Councils actually helped me realize that you need to slow it down a bit and actually really assess things and not just jump into things. So I think being part of the Youth Council has really done that. Number one, put that integrity element in the forefront. And secondly, just given me the opportunity just to slow down. I've had the conversation with you where I'm looking for my next opportunity in the sports industry, but, I'm not jumping at every opportunity that's coming. I'm taking anybody that brings an opportunity. I'll sit down and do my due diligence thoroughly, which is not something before that I would have done. I would have probably jumped at an opportunity. But now just being part of this Youth Council, amazing Youth Council with so many people, has given me that understanding of you need to slow things down and get a proper understanding of how things are being done, especially, if you want to be an individual that's a part of the Sega Youth Council. Yeah.
I really love that point of the due diligence standpoint, because like you've said, and same here, when I jumped 2 feet in the sports industry, we're like, go, go, go. We want to get things done. And actually, you're so spot on sometimes as being, new leaders in the industry, or very young in the industry, taking a step back and doing the research is vital. And I hope if you're watching this, you can really learn what Lakar said, because even I've experienced that this 18 months in different projects. One thing I want to touch on now is, what have you really enjoyed from the last 18 months of this experience? I'm really curious.
The challenges, Ed, funny enough, the challenges, I mean, the time challenge of everybody, that's been quite fun in a way, to see how, as a youth council, we actually overcome it. Also, just the project that we're putting together, I think that's been really exciting. The research project, and how we've had to overcome certain challenges to get it out. So that's been quite remarkable. But at the end of the day, it's always going to be the interactions with the group. I mean, I've learned so much from the group, just interacting with certain people in the group, and even on a one-on-one basis, talking to you. I mean, I've learned quite a lot from you personally in terms of podcasting and just broadcasting. But also, just speaking to Thomas about a few things with regards to research, and just everybody else in the group. There's been a lot of, I think the biggest thing I'll take away is the connections and the interactions I've had with the individuals, which is essentially what, when I first started out this journey, was one of the big things that I did want to tick off. Yeah.
Amazing. I hope people are taking notes, because that's exactly the same. It's all about the people and the interactions of the different conversations. And I can relate to that so much as well. Just for any viewer watching, what one guidance tip would you give to somebody who is on the fence again? Like, we've talked about the application side. Hopefully they've got confidence, but just for a final tip of somebody's going, I'm interested, but still not sure, what guidance tip would you give to them with regards to applying for the Sega Youth Council?
I'd say do your research. Number one, do your research. Don't be afraid to reach out to any of the other youth council members. Just reach out to people, have a feel of their experiences, get that conversation going. And I mean, I did a similar thing. I was on the fence, and for many reasons. I was on the fence, and I reached out to Ian, and Ian really just broke down the whole 18 months for me. He broke down what the youth council was all about, and what Sega was trying to do with the youth council, and that just really made sure that I was on board. I really did enjoy that. And for anyone who's sitting on the fence, do your research, read up more. I do believe on the Sega on the Sega platforms, whether it be your social media platforms or it be the website platform, you'll always find information about the youth council. There's a lot. I think there's a group of 18 of us as well. As the youth council, reach out to any one of us. I'm pretty sure you'll find somebody who's willing to have a conversation with you and just explain into more what the youth council is about, and any questions that you may have as well might get answered by the people. Yeah.
Amazing.
And just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Just do it, as Nike would say. Look, that is fantastic. And for people who are watching, I hope you've enjoyed this bite-sized interview with Lakar. For me, it's been a pleasure. And this is why I enjoy rocking the mic, even for these micro interviews, because this is what it's all about, everybody. It's about the people. But on that note, enjoy the rest of Sport Integrity Week. Thank you for watching, and take care.
The second day of Sport Integrity Week 2023 and the Sega Youth Forum now come to an end. With 3 panels filled with pressing topics and ever more present young leaders and experts, Sega is now allowed, for the 3rd time in a row, the youth's voice to be present in one of the largest global discussions of sport integrity. Also, with certain ends, new beginnings arise, and we at Sega are not done. The Youth Council is prepared to complete a survey study regarding the perspective of young leaders' view of sport integrity. And we are hoping that with this paper, we can reach a higher interest of young leaders. We can share their view and their ambitions for cleaner sport with less scandals and more play, less talk. So I thank you all for listening, for caring, and for those that want to join us in the future, we are always open to new ideas, new people, new experiences, and certainly new inspiration. I thank you all, and goodbye.